Hello everyone, welcome to the video where today I'm going to be taking a look at the brand new British helicopter tech tree that is coming to War Thunder in update 1.91. On a recent development server session, I was able to take a look at all of these new helicopters and will now be giving an overview of the tech tree as a whole and the vehicles contained within it. Now the new British lineup consists of 4 helicopters, the Scout as the reserve helicopter, then the Wasp, then the Lynx AH Mark 1 as our tier 6, and then the G-Lynx, which was Westland helicopter's demonstrator helicopter. That's going to be the premium helicopter, and at least at the current time it is the best performing helicopter in the tree, so at least at release, yeah, the premium is the best. We currently don't have a tier 7 helicopter for the Brits, although I would presume that in a future update we'd likely get either the Wildcat or the Augusta Westland Apache to fill the role of a tier 7 heli. So starting off with the Scout, your British reserve helicopter currently at 9.0 BR. After flying this, I will say it is just as I expected. The performance is very much comparable with the Alouette 2 over on the German tree and the French tree, both when it comes to performance and its weapons. Talking of the weapons, you have 4 AGM-22 ATGMs. Essentially, they are the same as the SS-11s on the Alouette. These have up to 600mm of effective pen, and you do also have 2 machine guns, 7.62mm L8A1 machine guns. Not the best loadout by any means, but those ATGMs do come stock, and there are some helis that would either have to grind out the ATGMs or just wouldn't have any guided weaponry at all, such as the AH-1G, so I am happy that the Scout not only gets them, but also has them stock. This will certainly be incredibly useful in both helicopter battles and ground battles alike. The Scout has 2 camouflage options. Both of them are bi-color camouflages. There's the standard brown and green camouflage, and then there's a secondary one which is grey and green, and nothing special, but the variety is appreciated. Getting over into a test flight, we can actually see that the performance is nothing special. Again, very comparable to the Alouette 2, and it will most likely end up being a punching bag for more advanced helis. But then again, having both guns and ATGMs in its stock configuration will help with the early grind, especially in helicopter battles. It'll make those kind of battles a bit more bearable, with the ability to engage from longer ranges with those ATGMs. And you have a range of 1.86 miles on those ATGMs, so in most cases that will allow you to engage from a somewhat safe distance and make, really, as I said, that early grind just that little bit more bearable. Moving on now to the Scout's naval counterpart, the Wasp. Now, essentially, this is a Scout, just with a few minor differences. Firstly, you got no guns. Your only weapon now is those 4 AGM-22 ATGMs, of which, you carry 4 of them, just like on the Scout. You also have a different gear setup. This is probably the most noticeable difference. A quad-legged wheeled undercarriage, which in real life was sort of just to allow for better movement of the helicopter when it was landed on the decks of naval vessels. As, of course, it's a naval helicopter, and on boats, the deck, it isn't usually so big, so moving it around with the gear was a lot easier than having one with the landing skids that we've seen on the Scout. As for performance, it is essentially the same as the Scout, the only difference being a minor speed difference, with the Wasp, of course, being 8 miles an hour slower, as in fact it is a little bit heavier. When it comes to camouflages, we do again have an additional paint scheme. First off, the standard camo, it's this sickly green colour, I absolutely hate it, but the secondary camo is this lovely naval camouflage, which unfortunately is locked behind a 200 Golden Eagle paywall, but again, I am happy that we get some variety with some more camos. As for a test flight, it is the same as the Scout. Not really anything worth mentioning aside from the removal of the guns, which actually does make the helicopter somewhat less capable, as now you just have those 4 ATGMs to use against targets. When you had the guns, at least in heli mode, you could have used them to take out lighter targets such as artillery or AA guns, of which would get you a bit more RP, a bit more SL for the grind on the heli. Now you just have the 4 ATGMs, and if you know what you're doing, you're not going to be using ATGMs against light targets. So I would say actually this does make the heli a bit less capable, and even though they were only 7.62mm machine guns on the Scouts, they could be somewhat useful in a close quarters engagement with other helis. So again, not having the guns does make it a little bit less capable. Moving on now into Tier 6 with our only Tier 6 researchable helicopter, the Lynx AH Mark I. To put it bluntly, this is a slower equivalent of G-Lynx, whereas G-Lynx only has loadouts with the best version of a particular weapon. For example, it does not include the TOW 1 but only has the TOW 2 variant of the ATGM. With the AH1, you will have to grind through a few modifications of the TOW 1 before you can get to the more advanced variant. You do though get flares as a tier 1 modification, which is incredibly useful especially in helicopter battles, considering how the meta is currently ruled by infrared guided air-to-air missiles. And actually, once you have those flares, right underneath them, you can get the AIM-92 Stinger air-to-air missile, which is a tier 2 modification, which is interesting because in most helicopters, the air-to-air missiles are a tier 4 modification, so you're actually going to be able to get these a bit quicker than most other helis. Of course, the Lynx can also mount the AGM-114 Hellfire, of which it can hold up to 8 of, although this is a tier 4 modification, where, you have to go through the TOW 1 and the TOW 2 modifications before you can unlock this weapon. The Lynx also features a CAD-B cannon and Mighty Mouse rockets, which are actually its stock weapons configuration, which, I would say go in Heli EC, go off to the back of the map, take out ground targets using those weapons, and you should be able to get down to guided weaponry fairly quickly. Getting into a test flight, it is fairly obvious to see the agility and the speed that the Lynx possesses, something of which is incredibly useful, especially in helicopter battles. The loadout I'm using is the 4 Stinger AAMs and then 8 TOW 2 ATGMs. This is the top loadout you can do with guided ATGM weaponry rather than the Hellfires. And we can see how the TOWs are fairly useful. They're fairly good. They have 900mm of pen and a range of 2.3 miles, so you can take out targets from a fair distance. And actually, in this test flight, I did also take down the MiG-15 using one of the TOW ATGMs. And, that's a similar technique to what is commonly used in helicopter battles by killing enemy helis with ATGMs. Likely something you'll be doing a fair amount with the TOWs as you grind through this helicopter's mods if you decide to play Helicopter EC. Moving on now to G-Lynx, the British premium helicopter and certainly the most competitive of the British helis at the current time. Essentially a Lynx AH1 with only the best payload options and a pretty big speed advantage effectively, while also maintaining of course the great agility that comes along with the Lynx helicopter. Now this is certainly among the top 5 helis in game. Personally, I wouldn't deny it being a competitor for the best heli in game, especially in helicopter battles where this perfectly fits the current meta of that game mode. You of course have air-to-air missiles in the form of the AIM-92 Stinger. This has an 18G overload, a top speed of 1000 meters per second, and actually an all-aspect lock range of 2.8 miles. So in some cases, you will be able to lock onto an enemy heli before they're even within ATGM range. Now you also have the TOW 2, which we have spoken about already, and also the AGM-114 Hellfire, of which you can use a laser to guide, and this is certainly the best option, especially in ground battles, with 1100mm of effective pen and a speed of 475 meters per second. Although when it comes to heli battles, I will still be taking the TOW 2, because just generally the way that you guide that missile, it's a lot easier to shoot down moving enemy targets than with the Hellfire, where, aiming a laser at a moving target, the missile can get a bit iffy in situations like that. As with the AH1, you can also equip the CAD-B cannon and the Mighty Mouse rockets, although since you have all of the weapon loads unlocked off the bat, I really see no reason for you to take these weapons. You also have 92 flares, of which will minimize the threat of air-to-air missiles pretty dramatically. If you can spot the missile early enough and fire off your flares, it will not be an issue. Of course, at very close range, there are times when the flares have minimal effect on the missile, but in most cases, if you see the missile, you fire the flares, that threat is just going to be gone. Going into some gameplay, it's clear to see that G-Lynx has very good performance, as with the AH1, although in this case just it can go a bit faster, and you can do all kind of tricks actually that most helis simply cannot perform. The Hellfire is of course very good for taking out ground targets, and the Stingers work very nicely against both helicopters and aircraft alike, so if you take them along in both ground battles and heli battles, you're likely going to get good use out of them. Personally, I would consider G-Lynx to be the best bundle helicopter. I did play the Tiger a little bit, and, you know, I would say that the French premium Tiger HAP is the only competitor, but I would personally say, due to G-Lynx's sort of performance advantage, I would say that G-Lynx is the best, with probably the Tiger in a close second place. Personally, I am very excited to get these vehicles after 1.91's release, especially both of the Lynx variants, and I feel these are going to be incredibly fun in helicopter battles. Also, the fact that there's only 2 researchable helicopters, I can see this tree being relatively easy to grind in a fairly short space of time. And, you know, they're going to add a tier 7 heli, probably the Apache, so if you want just an Apache, this could be one of the best options when they add it, as the tree is fairly small. The American tree, you have 4 helicopters that will likely be before the Apache that you have to research. In this case, you have to research 2 helicopters, and after that it's likely we're just going to jump straight down to tier 7. So I'm really interested to see actually how the tree is developed in future updates. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, please consider smashing the like button, maybe even subscribe to the channel. If you do, that would be massively appreciated. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.